decided that the concert promoters were not also responsible for his death. Conrad Murray claimed it proves he had nothing to do with Michael Jackson dying. Listen to what he said about that this morning on the Today Show.
I cried because, for once, the world was allowed to hear some of the facts as it pertained to this matter. A lot of facts that had been suppressed, much of which I was denied, and my attorneys could not present during my criminal trial, that I was not given a fair chance to defend myself.
So, is Conrad Murray delusional? I figure who better to ask than the man who was the foreman of the jury that just found the concert promoters not liable. Greg Barden's right here with us tonight from Los Angeles. So good to have you here, Greg, after your long service for that jury. So let me get right into it. When you decided to clear concert promoters AEG Live of negligence for hiring Dr. Murray, you and your fellow jurors had to declare that Murray was not unfit or incompetent. But is he just delusional to think that that also somehow cleared his name?
I think so. We didn't say that he was just unfit or incompetent. We said he was fit and competent for the job in which he was hired to do. And he was hired to be a general practitioner, and he went well beyond the scope of that when he decided to administer propofol to Mr. Jackson. He was not hired for that purpose.
So help us understand exactly how you and the jury came to that decision, because obviously it was a lot to figure out.
Yeah, it was, we were given a series of questions. We weren't just thrown into a room and said, come out and tell us if AEG is liable or if they're not. I believe had that been the case, we might have been there another 2 years discussing it. But we were given a series of 5 questions, and each question, if we answered yes, we had to move on to the next one. And question number 2, of course, it read, was Dr. Conrad Murray unfit or incompetent to perform the work for which he was hired? I think where a lot of the confusion comes in, a lot of people just read it was Dr. Conrad Murray unfit or incompetent, and they stop right there. If you stop right there, I believe the answer probably would have been yes, he was unfit and incompetent. But it was the wording of the question which said for which he was hired.
Right.
And again, he was hired to be a general practitioner.
And then what happened beyond that was really between him and Michael Jackson. I want to bring in tonight, who's joining us from San Francisco, Thomas Mesereau, who was once Michael Jackson's attorney, also a good friend. It's good to see you, Tom. When you hear what Dr. Conrad Murray is saying, that this somehow clears him, do you think he's being delusional?
At best, he's being delusional. I think Conrad Murray tries to fool the world, and in the process tries to fool himself. Conrad Murray never seems to accept responsibility for anything he's done. He always tries to blame Michael Jackson or someone else. To call him delusional is probably to be kind to him. I'd call him something a lot worse.
Well, here's something else that Conrad Murray said this morning on the Today Show that could back you up there, Tom. He said, Greg, that you and the jurors didn't believe he was unethical. I want to watch that with you.
I don't think that was ever said that I was unethical. I think what the juror said is that if ethics were the issue, conclusions may be different. And this is not about ethics. This was about the Jacksons bringing a lawsuit, which I felt from the beginning was frivolous.
Yeah, well, a lot of people did. But, Greg, I don't think that actually represents what you said outside of the court or just alluded to a moment ago right here. In fact, you said outside the court, had ethics been in the questions you had to answer, the outcome might have been different. Explain that to me.
Had they used the word unethical in the question, I believe we would have said, yes, he was unethical. All of us in the jury room, all 12 of us, definitely believe he was unethical. Make no mistake about that. We did not say he was unethical. We did say he was unethical. We had to answer the question, and it was incompetent or unfit for the job which he was hired to perform. And again, he was hired to be a general practitioner, which meant, treating colds, flu, minor cough, something to that effect. He was not hired to administer propofol. Had he been hired to administer propofol, then he would have definitely been unfit and incompetent, because it takes an anesthesiologist to do that. So he's definitely mistaken. He was definitely unethical in our mind. And like I said, had the unethical word been used in the question, I think we would have seen it the other way around.
Greg, were you surprised, given the context of the entire case, that the word ethical was not offered in there?
I was very surprised because the word unethical was used an awful lot during the trial. However, I found out, of course, after the trial, talking to the attorneys tried to get the word in there, but one of the attorneys, Deborah Chang, told me that the law just wouldn't allow him to do that.
Tom, what do you think? Was that a big miss? Should the jury have, in fact, been asked if Dr. Murray was incompetent for administering the propofol, even though that obviously fell outside of what he was being hired for by AEG?
Well, again, I wasn't in the courtroom. I was on the plaintiff's witness list and not called. I was supposed to be called if the defense tried to make a big issue out of Michael being charged with molestation, because Michael was acquitted and I was his lead criminal defense counsel in that trial. I think that the issue really was Conrad Murray hired to handle Michael Jackson's prescription addiction? And my understanding was that evidence came in that one of the executives for AEG, who had been a tour manager for Michael Jackson in the 90s, was well aware that Michael had a problem with prescription drugs following the Pepsi commercial where his scalp was burned. And my understanding was that this man knew that an addiction specialist had been hired at that time, and I believe the plaintiffs were arguing that AEG, because of this prior knowledge and involvement, should have known that the doctor that Michael needed had to deal with this particular problem, and Conrad Murray was not a specialist in this area. That's my understanding.
And of course, a lot of people certainly felt that had Dr. Conrad Murray not been the one to help Michael out, Michael would have found somebody else who would have helped him out. In fact, one other jury member, Kevin Smith, said that the concert promoters at AEG Live were basically on the outside looking in and watching this all play out. Let's watch that.
If AEG had known what was going on behind closed doors, it probably would have made a world of difference. But they didn't. Michael Jackson was pretty used to getting his own way. He was a big star. He had all these doctors who wanted to be his doctor, and he could pretty much get what he wanted. And if anybody said no, well, they were out of the mix, and he'd find somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've heard about Michael Jackson for years and years. So, Greg, what do you think, having sat there for 21 weeks, having heard all of the stories about Michael and his behavior, do you believe that, too, that had it not been Dr. Murray, Michael certainly would have found somebody else to help him out?
I'm not sure about that. That's not something we were really allowed to consider in the question, because that would be speculation on our part. So we didn't really consider that, though that may have been the feelings of individual jurors. But it's not something that we talked about in the jury room as to whether it would have happened or not anyway. That wasn't something that we were really charged with deciding.
Okay. Dr. Murray also said today, by the way, that when he's released from jail, he's going to try to practice medicine again. Now, Tom, I hear that, and I think he's being completely delusional to think that patients would want to go anywhere near him. I know I wouldn't.
Well, there are doctors who have lost their license for periods of time and then got reinstated. They got reinstated because medical boards decided that they had rehabilitated, that they had changed their ways, that they understood their wrongdoing. This guy has never admitted that he did anything wrong, never taken responsibility for anything he did to Michael, and I don't see this guy getting a license anytime soon in any state in the United States. He may go abroad and be allowed to practice, but I can't see him doing it here anytime soon.
Yeah, that would be a tough climb uphill. All right, so who will be number one on our countdown? I know a lot of people think maybe it should be Miley Cyrus tonight.
You can watch